Hey guys, it's Son here. Welcome back. It's been a while. After making the Death Masterclass, I decided to take a little bit of a break. This is the Wizard101 Questing Masterclass for all wizards of all skill levels, whether you're new, returning, very veteran, or even just a little bit of the in between. This is for you, and this is going to be a questing masterclass, so helping you understand your questing habits, and other things like that. But there's also, in the future, I'm going to be doing a gold efficiency thing, masterclass, teaching you all about, gold, where to farm for gold, how to best use your gold for situations, and when it would be best to start saving your gold and when to spend it. Then I'll also have a gardening masterclass, probably, maybe, I don't know. Definitely a pet training one. And then once we finally get to near the time where I can do it, we're also going to do some raiding masterclasses and also some school specific PvP masterclasses, especially for death, since I am the death main for the masterclass series. So, anyways, let's get started. So, what we're going to talk about is questing habits, understanding school specific identities, improving overall questing atmosphere, being able to read and react and make better decisions in card selection during battle, adapting chosen school to team play, and what to look for in 4-man insurances, and farming tips and leveling power spikes. Farming tips and leveling power spikes. Jesus. Okay. Anyways, so moving on. First off, we will be doing the healthy questing and questing habits. So taking these steps. This is for pretty much setting up questing sessions and setting a goal for those questing sessions. So you want to do a 3 to 4 hour questing block and make a goal for those 3 to 4 hours of playtime. And then you can quest for that amount of time, trying your best to reach that goal. After the session is up, if you made it to your goal, good job. Get ready to make a new one after a little break. And then, of course, step 4 is take said break after a questing session, reset your brain, reset your mentality for questing, and get ready for the next day. And just reflect if you did make the goal, if you didn't make the goal, because if you did make the goal, hey, maybe try to set a harder goal next time. Or if you did make the goal, maybe try to shrink the size of the goal down. Let's say you were trying to complete an entire world in every side quest in the amount of 3 to 4 hours, and you only made it about halfway through the world. Maybe set it up next time so that, hey, I want to get to the half point of X world, and then once you're more confident and you are able to quest faster, then start setting up harder, tougher goals that you can try to get to. Healthy questing is usually done solo or with a team that is not comprised of a super high level wizard that will carry you through every arc of the game. That's going to speed it up a lot, but that's really not the type of questing that I would consider healthy questing. It's more of you're getting boosted through the levels to reach the late game quicker. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You're just missing key points of where you can really learn about your school and your school identity early on. You're missing those steps by getting boosted. So now this is where the gear replacement, questing habit, the level power spikes and such really matter. So level gear replacement. This is what you do when you take gear at certain levels, replace it with better variants as you continuously go through the levels. It's a lot more prominent in the early game, as every 5 levels, you'll usually have a gear set that will be improved every time you level up, every 5 levels, probably up until around level 50. And then you'll start seeing, and then level 60. And then you have this long stretch until level 100 that you hit a sort of big-ish power spike. And then really your gear upgrades usually happen almost every 10 levels. So like at 110, 120, 130. 140 is odd. The gear pieces at 140 are sort of weird. But then you have 150, 160, 170, and soon 180, which there are differences between each. It will also help you, so, making sure you have your gear leveled will help you better because you'll have stats that will be up to date and you'll be able to keep up with the difficulty spike of the worlds as you keep progressing. And also, it also gives you into a better habit, making sure, because if you don't keep your gear optimized, you're going to start hitting pitfalls. And you're going to start, it's almost like a curve, or a hill. You have the hill, it's going up, it's going up, it's going up. You hit the spike, you hit the proper spike, and then it sort of plateaus. And if you, where the difficulty will be running parallel with your gear, and then the difficulty will start going up and up and up. And if you don't replace your gear, you're still going to be just flatlining on a plateau until you're not. And then you just fall off the plateau because your gear is so poorly optimized or leveled that you're not really getting full benefit of good stats or anything from it, and you're actually making it harder on yourself to keep progressing. Okay, so school-specific identities. This is not based on the magic wheel, because the magic wheel and what school identities in like questing are two different things. Well, yes, they do have their specific identities, like super specific. These are more of your generalized identities. So your fire, storm, and myth schools are your hitter schools. Highest damage spells of all schools, hard-hitting AoEs to clear fights out quickly if set up properly. They're pretty much the heavy hitters. Pun not intended. Your support schools are usually balanced death. They have utilities that can directly buff up damage, and that the hitting schools use to deal their huge amounts of damage. Death, i.e. with feint, and curse, balance with hex, balance blade, blade storm, elemental and spirit blades, and traps. Then, of course, you have your tanks, high health, higher resistances, can take a lot of hits, and can usually survive for long periods of time. I combined Ice and Life to this because they both have lots of health. Life actually surpasses Ice in their max health later in the questing line around like 170, 160, 170, which is interesting. So Life can be a better tank than Ice can. And also you could put an asterisk here for Myth as well. Myth also seems to get bigger resistances at later levels as well. So if you don't have an Ice or a Life, you could always have a Myth sort of be a discount tank to soak up the damage. They might not have the same amount of health as Ice and Life, but they still have a good amount. And lastly, you have your healers, Balance and Life. They contain multiple healing spells that can be cast on people to heal them and or others during combat. Balance has Helping Hands and Availing Hands. They're healing over time spells that can help, but your big healer school is obviously going to be Life. You have Fairy, Sprite, Sprite Queen, Unicorn, Rebirth, Satyr, Dryad. You have all these healing spells. Scion of Life, too, if you really wanted to go that route. So those are your sort of school identities. So how understanding these will help? Okay. You'll understand that, firstly, hitter schools are always going to deal the most damage, so they can quest better than other schools if they're set up properly. Other schools will sort of be in this sort of, oh, I'm sort of lacking damage, but I can still clear stuff, it just takes a little longer. And then you have school like Death that can pretty much face tank whatever, heal up, and they'll be fine because of drains. Anyways, Fire, Myth, Storm. Here we go. Clear, better, Ice, Life. They lack because Ice and Life lack the damage of these hitting schools, and support schools are better at holding their own with utilities. Ice is just bulky and tanky. Life has healing spells. Balance as well has their own things, but that's down here on a later line of text. And then you have schools like Life and Death. They have great sustain because they have higher health than Fire, Myth, and Storm. Then they can heal themselves, further buff their damage if you're Death because you have Faint, because Faint is probably the best spell that you could ever have as any school, really. That extra 70% can do wonders for you. And then lastly, tanks. Ice being a tank school, they can tank a lot of hits. They struggle if you don't have ways to improve your damage. And this is where gear optimization comes into play. Because an Ice with good optimized gear and pet can still do amazing amounts of damage. They're not going to do the same as a hitter school with optimized gear, but they're going to come close. They can come close. And then also balance. Balance is sort of the dark horse, the sort of unicorn of the group here, because it's so different than all the other schools. First off, balance does not have any resistances. Balance resists itself. So, balance resisting itself, they don't have a convert. How does that play into questing a balance? Well, there are balance enemies and balance bosses that have resist. So you're going to kill them way slower, and you might struggle there. Luckily, there are a couple of balance spells that do non-balance damage. Hydra, Spectral Blast, Spiritual Tribune if you got the lore spell, Chimera, Scales of Destiny if you are at that point. But at that point, you're really not worrying too much about your balance resist because at this point you have Pierce and you can still get through. So like I said here is balance spells do not, there are spells for balance that do non-balance damage, but they're far and few in between. So just be careful about that. So notes on the next two slides are the sort of reading the battle state, understanding all this. So if this does feel a little too advanced or something that you just can't really understand or really understand when I'm trying to discuss it with you, then feel free to skip over these next two slides as you don't really need these two to really improve. But these are very helpful for advanced players that are really trying to, micromanage their play. So, reading the room and reacting accordingly. Now, reading the room is a lot more than just going inside a sigil and looking at the boss and saying, that's a balanced boss. I'm fire. They have a ice minion that has fire shield, so I need to, do this, this, and this. Yes, that's helpful, but that is just analyzing stuff at face value. What I mean is keeping track of enemy pips, buffs, what's in your hand at the time of the countdown when you need to select your spell, all of that. Even your teammates. Read what your teammates are doing. Read what your teammates have on them. A whole bunch of stuff. Because doing this is a lot more advanced than normal stuff and takes a lot of time to really understand and really look at what you're trying to do. Because there might be card selections in your hand that may look good at face value, but end up altering the battle at some point that you may not know right away. Let's say you decide to, use a meteor strike when somebody, and you are in the second position, right? You decide to meteor strike. And then, after the meteor strike, you see blades. A bounce blade and a TC fire blade go up on you. Well, you just missed some extra damage output because you ended up just hitting that meteor strike just a little bit too quickly. Or somebody, or the storm on the end has a whole bunch of buffs and is using a Storm Lord, and you use his feint by using something like a Phoenix. I know, a very odd thing, but you get what I mean. You know, using people's buffs that were supposed to be for maybe the designated hitter, that doesn't help too much. And then let's just say, after that Stormlord hits, it doesn't kill the boss. The boss has a specific cheat that does a lot of damage, and you die. Nobody has heals, and your Storm is out of cards. And the two support players just don't have anything. This is where reading the room probably would have helped, because you could have easily just waited and then followed up afterwards, instead of preemptively going on the offensive, where you risk the chance of the boss not dying or something not dying that could be a problem later down the line. Now, early game fights, this isn't a problem. Those are way too quick to really need to read the room, but easy habit to get into. But really, this is not very helpful in like solo fights at times. It's more for team settings if you're doing like challenge mode, raids, or even PvP in a 1v1. Since it is turn-based and you go back and forth, and also the funny thing about reading the room and reacting is you do it without even knowing it. So let's say we're in a fight. There's a boss, a bounce boss. And let's say you're fire. I like using fire because they have a lot of utility in their school identity with their damage over times to really be effective. So let's say you are a fire wizard and you are fighting a balanced boss. This balanced boss carries in their spells, in their selection of spells, Spirit Shield, Elemental Shield. But you took the liberty of spellmenting up your Elephant to Path B. It's a shield removal. This is important. And you decide to set up yourself blade up. You blade up very much so. But they put up 6 shields. One of which is fire. One of which you can remove pretty easily. And you react by using your Elephant that not only removes the shields, but puts a damage over time on them, and you do a lot of damage to that boss. You just reacted accordingly, and you read the room, seeing that, hey, I was able to remove the shields, get a big damage over time, and also get a big hit at the same time. You just did a very optimal strategy in just selection by just watching what the enemy did. And let's just say, and then the next turn you detonate that damage over time and you kill him because he had a ton of power pips and he was about to hit you big. You saved yourself damage taken by just playing one spell. That is what reading the room really comes down to. Is just take time to sort of select your spell a lot more carefully than just, I'm going to use this spell and go with it. That's really just what I'm trying to get at there. And now we have card selection. Reading the room, reacting to any spells, turn prior or turn after. Difference is whether you get a good hit with no debuffs or a better buffed hit through a shield or weakness. That's card selection. Limiting downtime of passing and discarding for finding cards by picking high impact cards to directly impact course of battle, or low impact spells to buffer and set up hits. High impact spells are usually going to be your normal hits, maybe a shield, a weakness, or a healing, or a spell that heals all. They are all considered high impact because right now it is mostly going to affect the here and now, especially if people are doing stuff that can be annoying. You know, shield spamming is not, we might call shield spamming annoying, but it's very high impact. It's keeping you from getting the most amount of damage done every single turn by just putting a shield up, putting a shield up, putting a shield up. It's repetitive, it's annoying, but it is very high impact. It's going to change multiple of the here and now turns. And then you have lower impact spells. Something steady, maybe, like a storm bubble. It's not really impacting the battle much, but as the battle progresses, it's slowly going to have more use, especially if it's not being countered. Auras are a great example of this as well. You put up that defensive aura, it's low impact. It's not really doing anything unless you are taking damage. Because if you're taking damage, this low impact spell actually has use because you're actually mitigating damage taken with that aura up. And then blades and traps are usually very low impact as well, as they're there, but you might not use them for who knows how many turns because you need to keep reacting to whatever the opponent throws at you. Hopefully that makes some sense. Like I said, this is more advanced, so if you aren't if you aren't like a big PvP head or somebody that isn't really into advanced content, combat, stuff like that, this may have been a little just too much for you, and I don't blame you, if you want to skip over these two sections. Anyways, let's get into the school adaptation. I know. Here we go. This selection is very simple. Inside of, 4, what your role in a team of 4 would be if you're doing stuff like certain bosses, fights, stuff like that. So you're going to always be in a 4-man group usually, and here's where you will go in any selection. Your first slot will always be your tank or your healer. Since they are able to heal, they can usually keep themselves healed up anyways, or they could be the tank. Or they could be both. You could always have a life wizard that also has a lot of resistance. That's possible. Or you could have an ice that weaved into life and uses a life mastery. That works too. And then you could have 2 supports, or a support and a secondary hitter in spots 2 and 3. And then you have your main focused hitter in the 4th slot always. Because it's best to note that the last spot, being for the hitter, is always going to be the most optimal spot because the boss will usually either be in spot 1 or even at spots 2 and 3, depending on where the minions go. And also, you can always welcome a secondary hitter because sometimes you might just need a secondary hitter to maybe get some backup damage just in case the hitter just barely squeaks the damage and misses it by a little bit. Always good to have a secondary hitter if you feel like you need it. My team doesn't have a hitter school. What do I do now? Well, it's quite simple. Sometimes your team will be favored to not have the ideal hitter. Let's say you have a fire boss. And you have an ice with very good damage stats. He could be the hitter easily because fire will always have a boost to ice. Now, in Rochambeau, it's the other way around, but Magic Wheel, it'd be the other way around. Unfortunately for us, this is mainly for your questing. So during questing, fire is always going to have weakness to ice. Same thing. If it was an ice boss, you'd have a fire hitter for the boost. Either way. So just adapt to that on the fly. Remember that Stormfire and Myth are always the best hitters, but there are other schools that can be hitters too. They just might need extra buffs, i.e. death, life. Balance is probably the hardest school to really be a hitter with, unless you're trying to use something like, I know the spell. You guys can comment in the Description: the level 110 spell that you get from Polaris as a balance. Nessa Fury. There it is. Yeah, Nessa Fury. Anyways, right. And then try to adapt on the fly. I said that twice, as you can see there. When these situations come, it's best to sometimes adapt to this and come out of the fight maybe with a little extra health than you want, than to waste extra time trying to find an ideal team to run with. You will not always get the bet. You will always get a random mixed match of teams if you're doing team ups and stuff. You're not always going to have the God Squad. You're never going to have the amazing 4-man roster that you want to have. And that's okay. It's always best to try to adapt to these situations, and then it helps you better understand other times that you do get into these situations. Really does make a difference. Because what you learn in these fights will always be stored up here in your mind, in your brain, for the next time you do it. Which is always good tools to have, especially when it comes to repetition. And lastly, this is my favorite part, getting rid of the solo mentality. What does that mean? Well, it means stop thinking, oh, I can solo this, I can just solo everything because I'm just this amazing. That might be all fun and good, because soloing stuff is fun, especially when the fights are challenging. I, too, have done stuff like that. Just remember that attempting these solos can be maybe a little bit above of your skill level. Sometimes. Who knows? I prefer it when I've already done the dungeon, maybe go in and try it again. I'm not too worried about losing. Going in to the dungeon first, understanding what goes on in the dungeon, then come back and solo it later. Or try an attempt afterwards. Also, the reality can be that most of these soloers have taken hours to understand and research everything about the dungeon that they're doing to optimize their spell decks and their setups to really understand what they need to do every single turn and pinpoint it. They pinpoint every single move in their card selection that flows right into each scenario so they can easily get these fights done. So, yes, it would be fun to solo some of these harder dungeons and stuff, because, hey, if you said you do it and you got the recording to back it up, hey, good job. You did something that a lot of the community can't really do. But is it really necessary to do? No, not at all. Soloing stuff is fun, and that's what they should be for. It should be for fun, not to try to prove a point that you're the best wizard ever. Yes, there are a lot of fights in the game that can be soloed. But there are times where where there might be a fight where it's just, hey, I'm human, I'm not perfect, I just can't get through this by myself. I need to drop my ego and just go to a team up or ask for help in the Wizard101 Discord if you are part of that Discord, because they do have a lot of people that are willing to help you. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to just say, I can't solo this fight. And who knows, maybe the next time you get to this fight on a different wizard, you can say, hey, I can solo this. And you go and do it. Because you've taken the time to really understand that the time that you tried it before, that you just maybe weren't playing as optimally as you were this time. And now that you are optimally playing, you have a better understanding. You have a better understanding of the dungeon. And you're able to go in and actually solo it. And then you not only get to say that, hey, I got through it the first time as a group, but hey, I did it the second time, and I soloed it. I really improved my gameplay so much that I was able to take a fight that I didn't think was soloable and actually solo it. That's why getting rid of the solo everything mentality is very good. Because there are times where the solo mentality will tell you that you can when you can't, and that when you can't, you actually can. You just need to, you know, take the time to improve. Because just saying I can't do this, I can't do that is not a good mentality either. Just train yourself to go into a fight. If you can't do it, team up. And then come back to it later on a different wizard, try it again. Because most of the time, if you didn't solo it the first time, the next wizard that you come through with it, you might be able to solo it. Because you might have that the pet that you needed, or the gear set that you needed, or a mix of the two. Or you needed upgraded spell elements, or something different, or you need to weave into fire, or something like that. You know? There's so many things that come with soloing. And I might make a solo masterclass if you really want to go try hard soloing. I don't think I will. But if you want to see something like that, let me know. But yeah, this is the last slide. That was a lot. This was a lot. I know. But I thought, why not bring back the masterclass stuff and educational Wizard101 content with something a little bit more that has a little bit more meat to it. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this guide. Yeah, this was a lot. It was fun. I really enjoyed it. So let me know what other guides I should make. Comment section below. Feel free to like and subscribe if you wish. I am looking to hopefully get more of these guides out for you. And if you know anybody that would like to be a coach or a content creator or somebody who wants to help me make more of these masterclass guides for other schools, be sure to reach out to them because I would love to help. Or even if KingsIsle wants to help me out with this. I know I probably won't get any recognition from KingsIsle, but hey, I like making Wizard101 content even if I don't have a big following or anything like that. But yeah, hope this guy did help. Hope you learn, understand something, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you all the learning tools you need to improve your gameplay as a wizard in Wizard101. And I think I'm doing a pretty good job of it. And that's all I can smile and say that I've done that. So, either way, thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you guys in the next guide. Take care. Have a good one.